Hello and welcome to Craft with Sarah and day 7 of the Christmas Craft Countdown, where I'm sharing 20 brand new Christmas themed paper crafts to make with your Cricut machine over 20 days. Today's project has glitter, and then even more glitter. It's this beautiful mandala style layered shadow box, and I've cut every single piece in here from glitter card. I hope you can see on my camera just how shiny and sparkly and beautiful this is. It really makes an impact and it's super gorgeous with all those sparkles. But if you don't have glitter card, don't worry, you could just cut it from your regular coloured cardstock instead. Let's get started. The files for this project are free for the next 24 hours. Here's how to download them. Register a free ticket for the Christmas Craft Countdown at craftwithsarah.com/Christmas24. After registering, you'll get an email which contains a link to the schedule page for the countdown. Visit the schedule page to find and download today's files. Each download is only available for free for 24 hours after it goes live. If you've missed some, check out the Instant Access Bundle at craftwithsarah.com/Christmas24 bundle, which gives immediate and ongoing access to all of the files from the Christmas Craft Countdown, plus lots of extra bonus designs. The download comes in a zip folder. You need to unzip this before uploading the SVG files into Cricut Design Space. This is what the shadow box design looks like when it's loaded into Cricut Design Space. If you're not sure how to get to this point, check out the Foundation Learning section at the top of the schedule page for the Christmas Craft Countdown. Within there are links to lots of other helpful tutorials, and one of them is on how to upload SVGs to Cricut Design Space. This design is almost ready to cut. There's only one thing we need to change, and that is the size to make sure that it will perfectly fit in the frame you're intending to put it in. To measure your frame, first open up all the little tabs on the back so that you can remove the back of the frame. You can either measure this piece, or if your frame has a wooden spacer inside, you can measure from one edge of this right up to the other edge. I've already removed the glass in my frame so that it doesn't just reflect all my camera lights back at you, which is why you can't see that in there. So here's the back of my frame. I'm going to go from one side all the way to the other. Line the ruler up, touching it so that you know it's perfectly straight. And then mine comes to just over 9 inches. It's sort of 9.1. So I think I'm going to go 9 inches just to make it a little bit easier. But I'm going to double check that would work by looking at the spacer. I just want to make sure that 9 inches won't put it inside this gap. But no, that's good. It's still going to sit nicely on there if I decide to use the spacer. I haven't quite decided yet if I'm going to put my finished project on the back of this so that it sits at the back of the frame, or if I'm going to leave the spacer out and put it a little bit closer. So that's something to decide once it's all put together. But for now, I need to go back to Design Space and resize everything to 9 inches. Now I know the size of my design should be 9 inches, I can click on it and then check that the padlock icon at the top of the width and height boxes is closed. If yours is open, you can click it to close it. Then I can type 9 into the width, press enter on my keyboard, and the height will change in proportion. And that's it, super easy. I can go straight up to click make on the top right, and that will separate out all the colours for me. If you want to, you can change the paper size down here. Now for me, because my shadow box is quite big, it's not showing me the usual US letter or A4 options because my squares are too big for that paper. But if you were cutting this smaller, then you might see those other options in there. So I am going to need 12 by 12 inch card for my shadow box, and I am going to make it so sparkly. When you're happy with how everything is looking in Design Space, press continue on the bottom right to connect to your Cricut, then follow the on-screen instructions to get everything cut out from your cardstock. Here are all the pieces of my design cut out. I've gone a little bit extra special and I've cut every single thing out of glitter card. So I've used a kind of bright aquamarine style blue. I've got a light blue, I've got the white and 2 shades of silver. and it's super sparkly. Look at it catching in my camera lights. It's really, really pretty. But if you don't have glitter card, it's fine. It will still look absolutely lovely with just your regular cardstock. To stick this together, we're going to start at the bottom and work upwards. I'll move this apart. With these layers, they've all got a little circle taken out of one of the corners. You can see it there, and that shows that this is the bottom right corner. So they'll all line up, and you know that you've got everything round the right way because you can match the corner. So it's not in the very bottom one, but all these other three, they've got the holes in them, so you know which way around to put it. It's also in these two, so you can line those up. The only big one it isn't in, actually two big ones it isn't in, is the very bottom one and the very top one. The bottom one because that's perfectly square, so it doesn't matter, and this one because otherwise you'd see a hole in it, and we don't want that. So we're going to be putting this together with a combination of glue and foam squares. The glue I'm using is Bearly Art Glue, but I also like Collall, and these glues are great because they don't bend or wrinkle the cardstock like some glues can do. And then I'm using these foam squares from Dot & Dab. They're fairly small. If I had some bigger ones, that would actually be better for this project, but I don't, so I'm just going to have to use lots of teeny tiny ones instead. Okay, so I got my very bottom one here, and this white, the glitter comes off, so you'll probably see my hands all sparkling. All the other glitter I've used is non-shed, which is beautiful, but this white definitely gets you covered. Alright, so I've got this bit here, turn it upside down, and this one is a glue layer. Then I'm going to line this up on that very bottom bit so that my little circle in the bottom right of the card here is on the bottom right. Try and get this lined up as accurately as you can, and the same goes for all the pieces, because if you miss and your edges are not aligned very well, then it might not fit in your shadow box. Alright, now that's really hard to see on the camera, but in real life it is quite obvious where it's showing the white through all of the little holes to look like the snowflakes coming down. The next piece to add is the darker silver or grey to go on top of that one, and this will also be a glue layer because this is just finishing off that background for us. It can be a bit tricky sticking glitter card together. Depends a little bit on the type of glitter. This one is quite smooth, so I think this one will be alright, but some of my other ones is quite chunky and rough, which can make it hard for the glue to stick. So I'm making sure I add lots of glue on here so that it's not going to come off. Then once again, this gets glued on top, and the little circle in that bottom right should line up with the circle on this one that we've already done. That looks so sparkly! Next is our first foam square layer, which is the light blue one. Turn it over and put the pin back in my glue because I think it's going to take me a little while to get all these foam squares on, and bring some of these in. When you're adding your foam squares, you want to add a good amount on here, going all the way up the sides. You could use foam tape if you prefer, which comes in strips, or you could even cut some strips of some fun foam, or even thin strips of maybe like a thick cardboard or something to go on to give it some depth. But I prefer using the individual squares rather than strips because I've tried using the strips before, and I feel like because they're so long and go across the whole thing, it sort of pulls the card and it can end up puckering and it doesn't quite go on smoothly. Whereas with all the little squares being separate, it means that the card sort of lies a little bit flatter in my experience. And as well as putting some all the way around that edge, we also need some in the little rectangles joining into the middle and in the middle, and in the backs of all of these snowflakes. The reason for this is it means that everything will be fully supported by the foam squares, so it's going to sit wonderfully dimensional and be flat across all of the sides. If your foam squares are big, you might need to cut them smaller with a pair of scissors to fit in the back of some of these pieces. But these ones are teeny tiny, so I am just fine. Right, that's foam squares on all the back. Hopefully you can see them. It's a bit hard with white on a white surface as well. But now that I've got a good amount of those in all of my areas of the card, I can peel the tops off of the foam squares to reveal the stickiness underneath. That's all the tops of my foam squares off. Now I can bring this back in, line up that circle with the circle down here. I'm going to get my edges in place, including that circle, and then gently drop down before pushing. That way, if I didn't quite have it lined up right, I can pick it up and move it because it hasn't stuck yet. I'm just looking, and that all looks fairly well lined up. So now I can push down to get that stuck. The next piece to go on is this one. And you could either glue this one or use foam squares. It doesn't really matter, but I want my design to be really impactful with lots of layering, so I think I'm going to do foam squares on it. You might notice one of my snowflakes tore, this one here, when I was cutting it out, so it's missing one of its sticky out bits in the middle, but I didn't worry about that because once I stick the little extra one on top, it's going to cover that up and you won't see it anymore. And then this one, as I said, could be either, but I'm going to add my foam. I've put most of my foam squares on now, but I haven't been able to fit many in these snowflakes, only on these two. But I would quite like a little bit of foam on some of them if I can, because I think it'll help give it a better stick. Although because I've used glitter card and it is quite strong, actually that is still sitting fairly flat even without the foam underneath. So I can probably get away with it. But if you just turn yours over before taking the sticky bits off and place it upright, if you notice that your snowflakes are sort of going down and touching your work surface instead of staying flat, then you may just need to cut some of your foam squares as thin as you can and try and get some pieces in behind these snowflakes. But luckily for me, I won't need to do that as it does appear to be holding its shape just fine. So I am going to peel these tops off and then get it stuck. Right, these are all now super sticky. So I can line it up again and then gently drop down. Get all those sides even. That is good. And push down to stick. Look how sparkly it is. Oh, I love it. It's so shiny. The next piece to go on is this white one, which is another foam square layer. Once again, little circles all lining up. And gently drop down. Like that. That's looking good. And push on my very much shedding glitter card to get it to stick. Now we're on to the last of the big layers, which is this one, and this is a glue layer. Just noticed one of my little diamond shapes hasn't quite popped out. Oh, and another one. And another one. Sometimes it's really hard to tell with glitter card. It doesn't always come out. But I think that's all of them now. Oh no, one more. Spoke too soon. Finding them all now. Right. I think this actually is the last one. Yeah, that one looks good now. No, one more. Little circle. Actually, that didn't quite pop out. Right, now I can have my glue. I'm not going to add any glue to these bits because they're very narrow. I've just seen another diamond that's not popped out. Look here. I'm not going to add glue to these bits because they're so narrow, and I just think it will smush out and become really messy. So instead I'm just going to add it to the outside, and then this bit, big bit in the middle that's all solid. This time we don't have a circle on the bottom corner because this is the very top layer, otherwise you'd be able to see it, but it is symmetrical, I think. Maybe it's not quite, because that hasn't quite lined up right. Let's try the other way around. Alright, that's better. So if you put it on gently first, or even just hold it above, if you notice that you can see bits of the white card underneath through on these edges, or on some of your edges, that means it's the wrong way around. So just give it a little turn. And then it should line up perfectly on each side. So you should be able to see the light blue coming in a little bit on the sides from a few layers down. Sparkle, sparkle. All right, next I'm going to glue on all of the little snowflakes. These go in the middle of these bits so they line up. If you're feeling brave, you might be able to foam square some of them, but I think I'm just going to glue them all one at a time. First I'm going to put them in the right place just so I know I've got the right snowflakes on the right backing bits. They sort of match the shapes in the ones that go underneath. And then each side is the same four. So these two are the same. 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 And those two are the same. Alright, these are very thin. So be careful with your glue. If you're worried about making a mess with these, you could leave them off. It's just to add a bit more detail, but it still looks gorgeous without them. This one. And then this one lines up with the star shape on these. Then I'm going to go through the rest of them and glue them just one at a time, nice and slowly. This is the one that's going to cover up that little bit that I tore. Oops, got stuck to my finger. There. Now you can't tell that the silver underneath had torn, because that bit covers over where that little mistake was. So those white snowflakes stuck on. You can't really tell for my particular colours because my white is quite similar to that light silver, but when it's up close you can see those details on there. And now we've got the middle of the snowflake to make up next. The first one to add is the solid silver, which is foam squares. Just checking I've got that the right way round. Doesn't really matter too much. Okay, next we've got this one, which you can either glue or use your foam squares for. I am going to go for dimension with the foam squares. One of the ends of these has got a slightly different sort of rounded bit on. I wonder if that should really be the top. Let's switch it round so that the top can be the different one. It doesn't really matter which way round you put it as long as you're consistent on all of them. I'll put my rounded one at the top. Okay, one more. This one. And this time, final one is a glue layer. Ooh, if I don't throw it away first. Very careful you don't smush the glue out the sides. Just gently dabbing it down in the middle of that blue bit. And that's my snowflake papercraft design, all finished. I'm going to wait for that glue to dry and then put it in my frame. Alright, so I've now run into a little bit of a dilemma that I wasn't really expecting. Remember at the start I said that I couldn't decide if I wanted to put this on the back of the spacer in the frame or right up against the glass. Well, it turns out neither of those are actually going to work very well. I'll show you what I mean by putting the spacer back in my frame first. So as there's so many foam squares in here, if I was to put this on the back, then the back of my frame isn't going to fit in and I can't close any of those tabs down. I could leave the back off if I was just going to display this standing up, then the tabs do close and that would be one solution. So I can just display it looking beautiful like this and just not have the back. If you wanted to hang it up, that may be a little more troublesome. However, in the foundation learning section for this Christmas craft countdown, there is a link in there to a separate tutorial on how you can make your own hooks for the back of frames. So if you did maybe 2 of them or even one in the middle and glued it to the back of your snowflake, then you should still be able to hang it up. You just might need to do it from something really strong, or maybe cut about 5 of them, glue them one on top of the other, the little hooks, just to make sure that it's going to be strong enough to hold the bit of your frame. Alternatively, if you know you're not going to need this frame for anything else, you could try and take off the metal or plastic hanging bit that is already on there. You could probably go under it with a craft knife and get that off, and then glue it to the back here or even maybe onto your frame. So that's one option for framing it. The second would be to remove the spacer entirely. This one will be a bit difficult if your glass is in there because the snowflake comes out further than everything else, so it means that will touch right up against your glass. Which might look a little bit odd. But then when you put the back on the frame, if I was to close these up now, you see that's not going to hold it in place at all because it's too far into the frame. You could fix this by cutting some squares of thick cardboard or packaging. Here's some I did for a smaller frame on another project. So just pretend that these fill this whole space. You could stack these up and up and up until you've got enough space in there, enough depth that your back would sit, you know, where it's supposed to go like that. And then you can tuck those tabs in. Or if you want to do it this way and you don't mind about having the glass in there, you could remove the glass and that way it would sit in there beautifully without the front snowflake actually touching up against your glass. So there you go, there's a couple of options to go with. I think I'm going to go for the first one, keeping the spacer in, but then just leaving the back off of the frame. Because I like how it looks when the design's sort of sat a little bit further back. You might find that this isn't actually a problem for you if you glued some of the optional layers instead of foaming them, whereas I added foam for all of mine. So I'm going to put this in now, that way up, close those tabs down and just have it on display like this. And it'll be just fine. That's absolutely gorgeous. So sparkly, perfect for all those cold winter mornings. I hope you enjoyed crafting along with me to make this glittery snowflake shadow box, even with my slight framing mishaps at the end. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up and check out my YouTube channel for loads more Cricut crafts and Christmas fun. I hope to see you tomorrow for day 8 of the Christmas craft countdown, but for now, thank you so much for watching. Bye!